Welcome to Caribbean Mystics Podcast,
where we marry mysticism, superstition, and lore. I'm your host, Paulina.
And I'm your host, Gabrielle, and we are your resident Caribbean mystics.
Join us today as we explore the depths of real supernatural stories
told by real people located right in our very own backyard.
Ketchi is a young girl living in the dense foliage of French Guiana with her family. She's used to abiding by the natural rhythms and laws of nature. She is warned repeatedly about the supernatural dangers lurking just beyond where the eyes can see. Dangers waiting to entrap unsuspecting children. One day, on a walk home through tall grass, Ketchi comes face to face with one of the most feared ancient entities existing in the region.
Hi, so my name is Ketchi. I live here in St. Thomas. I've been here 16 or 17 years now, but I'm originally from French Guiana. And French Guiana is on the north coast of South America. It's a French department. We are part of France, but it's right there in the Amazon, 5 degrees from the equator. Most of the country is actually deep, deep jungle. And a lot of us humans live on the coastlines and down the rivers. The one thing that I really love about French Guiana is that we have such a blend of cultures over there. We have the Amerindians, which are the original natives of the land, and we have a lot of them that still live in there. Indian villages down the rivers, a lot down the rivers, and deep inland. But then there's a lot of African tribes. One famous one is Sahamaka. They live very pure and true to their culture, and they have their villages also. We have the Guyanese, we have a lot of people that are mixed race, and we call them métis. And the culture is very mixed with all the folklore and the stories and the beliefs of all these different kinds of people that live on this land. We have such a strong presence of just jungle and nature in French Guiana because a lot of it is not built up and it's just pure jungle, Amazonian jungle. And I grew up in a very unusual way. Only now I realize this, but back then it was just my normal. And I grew up out there in the jungle. My parents had about 80 acres. The property was beautiful. It was a lot of savanna, which is dry grass type landscape with some areas that are swampy, and half of our property was also just plain jungle that we planted. We had a lot of fruit trees, and my mom was a green thumb. She did a lot of gardening, and it was beautiful. And my mom really wanted us to grow up in nature. We didn't have much technology, TV and all of that. We didn't have any of that, and we didn't even have power until I was much older, maybe in my teens, out of really wanting to live that way, not because power was not available, because it was. So we had oil lamps, and it just really tunes you into the rhythms of nature. We would go to bed when it was dark, like the chickens. So it was a very beautiful childhood, close to nature. We were mostly outside all day, and rarely with adult supervision, honestly. And when I think about, the fact that we were in the jungle unprotected, we were so safe. The creek had caimans and anaconda, the savannah had all kind of snakes, and we woke up a couple times. We actually had tried to get sheep, and we woke up and the sheep got killed in the night by jaguars. So they were out there at night. You can hear the baboons yelling like real loud. So we were living in the thick of it, but I never grew up feeling unsafe, and we were out there all day playing, and nothing ever happened. We were safe, in the hands of nature. And my parents my parents were divorced, but my mom raised us as one with nature. And she also would tell us about all the things to look out for, the known little signs of, that you might want to actually avoid certain things. And so there were stories that were told about certain mischievous maybe entities or spirits, and these are just known in French Guiana. Most people know about them. I don't remember particularly being told these stories, I just remember knowing them. So for example, one of them was that if you ever were out there, playing, minding your business, and you heard a voice maybe in the bush calling your name, basically the rule was do not answer yes. So for example, if I was playing and I would hear Ketchi, Ketchi, you do not want to answer yes. You must answer something like, who is there, or who's that, is anybody there? But if you answer yes, it was known that there's certain mischievous spirits or entities that if you answer yes, that puts you basically under their spell, and they will play mischief on you or maybe even kidnap you. That actually did happen to a friend of mine, although she was fully grown by then, and it was her daughter whose name was being called. And she remembers hearing her daughter's name, and she heard it being called several times. And she remembered just hushing her daughter and telling her, whatever you do, don't answer, don't say anything, and just saying, let's go, let's go home. It never happened to me, so I feel blessed about that. Certain other things that we were told were, for example, the shape-shifting spirits. Same thing, they're usually up to no good, they're not your friend, and they were famous for shape-shifting and becoming like an owl, and I think the other one was maybe even a cat. I'm not sure about the cat though, but the owl for sure. And if you would hear an owl, and then this is something that all Guyanese people do, the locals do, you're supposed to cuss them out, because basically they're trying to listen to your conversation, and they're trying to do something bad to you, and so what you want to do is chase them. And so you'll always see French Guyanese people, if there's an owl that hoots or something, they'll like cuss them out, oh banda mama or something, and cuss them out to make them go. Those are things that I just kind of grew up knowing. The African tribe that lives in French Guiana, the Sahamaka, they're called, of course, they had a lot of voodoo, also magic and stuff like that. So we grew up knowing about those, like things to look out for and not touch, and what it would look like and what would happen to you. And my father actually had a friend who did touch one. I mean, he actually didn't touch it, he kicked it away with his foot, and he was warned to ignore it, because apparently it only works if you believe that it'll work. So they said you have to ignore it, and he kicked it, and he ended up getting some really bad toe infection. It got real bad, they had to cut his toe off. My dad told me this story because one day we came home to his home, and there was some strange thing hanging in the tree, and he just told us, do not look at it, ignore it, pretend like it's not there. I don't know much about what happened to it after that, but that's when he told us about possibly things bringing you a lot of bad luck. One day I was I think I was maybe 10, and I just remember that we were actually by my father's property. Same thing, this property is also in the countryside, not anywhere close to town, and most of his property is just virgin savanna or jungle. And we were walking with my father, most likely my 2 siblings, and we were walking on the edge of this, where the savanna ended, right by the road. And so this savanna was actually pretty tall. The grass was tall, probably up to my chest. and which is not always the case. Sometimes it's short, but this was a tall one, and I just remember being behind, probably dilly-dallying, and I just remember the grass shuffling in a way that, you know, growing up in nature, I just knew it was something that was there, alive. You recognize that movement, you know. And so I turned around and I saw the grass moving, and I thought, you know, what could that be? But I wasn't worried, and then suddenly came coming, darting out of the edge of the grass, this tiny little person. I thought it was a child. It was shorter than me, and I was a child. So real small, definitely like a darker skin. I don't really remember anything about the clothing. I just remember mostly the way it moved was fast and unnatural looking. To me, I felt like I didn't understand how this little being was moving. It saw me definitely and was shocked and turned around and ran straight back into the grass. And I remember just having this dread feeling, like I knew I needed to get back close to my father, and so I went straight next to him. I was more of a shy type child. I didn't say anything, but my father saw that I was in a strange state, and so he asked me what's going on, and I said, I think there's a child in the grass over there. So he was like, well, tell me, let's go, maybe it needs help. So we went closer and we're looking, but nothing was there anymore. And I remember him asking me details. So I described the child, and he said, well, that's really strange. I said, the strangest part about it is the feet. I just remember the feet were not in the right way, and it was moving so fast that for me to even capture that, I only could describe it after. But I told him the feet seemed to be on backwards, and then it just ran back in, and my brain just couldn't understand what I had just seen. And so he looked at me immediately, and he called my sibling. He said, let's go, we're going back home. And on the walk back home, he told us about the maskilili. That's also a known entity in Guyana, in French Guiana, and it's also up to no good. It does target, I think, children, and it does want to attract you to follow them and then get you lost, which is one of the reasons why they believe that his feet are backwards, so that you get lost following them, and the footprints just don't make sense, and you get lost, and then they can kidnap you. So he told us this story on the way back, and I just remember that the dread, I knew for the first time, because I had never felt unsafe, but I knew in that moment it was a different feeling, that I did feel unsafe, and I knew right away to go and stand by my father. I knew that it wasn't natural, whatever it was, and I knew that I needed to be safe, and I needed to be close to my father.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Caribbean Mystics Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Paulina.
Hi guys, it is us again. I'm your host, Gabrielle. And Ketchi's episode was super interesting, and I found that I got caught in her imagery. Like, she was super descriptive about her her childhood, and as much as I was like, wow, you know, like the amount of hardship it must have been to like not have any
like that,
electricity or plumbing or anything, any of the modern comforts that we experience and enjoy today. The way that she explained it had me almost feeling a bit of FOMO, like, you know, kind of wishing like, wow, I wish my childhood was as free as Ketchi owned, because that sounded like literal magic.
I was just about to use the same words. Magical is the imagery I get through her storytelling, and totally agree. It brought back a lot of memories for me as a child too, just growing up, like going in the bush and exploring nature, because that's a very Caribbean thing, you know. We're amongst and enveloped in nature and jungle. I mean, maybe not to the degree that Ketchi was, where I didn't have power, and it was, unless it was like a hurricane, and it was very rural. But yeah, totally magical experience she must have had as a child.
No, for sure. And it makes sense, you know, like when we think about the experiences that she spoke about, that related very much to paranormal and supernatural and all of the folklore and tales that have been passed down. It makes sense that people would have those type of experiences in such a remote location. You know, like I deeply believe that our spirituality is deeply connected to that connection to nature. And so
Absolutely.
being in that constant serene, you know, flowing water by your house and trees, and there is no pollution,
No distractions.
yeah, no traffic, you know, like I could imagine that it's really a beautiful opportunity to receive messaging and meditate, but also for children to really explore the depths of your imagination, which we've spoken about before, is so deeply connected to our divine connection. You know, like our connection to God is deeply rooted in imagination.
Yeah. And we've definitely also talked about the bond of like nature and spiritualism and that connection. And it's a common theme I've seen a lot within different spiritual beliefs, especially like Native American or indigenous or other belief systems or cultures that are so rooted in nature contexts. It's like you gain this sixth sense, this third eye, because you are so involved with the planet and the earth. Which is one of my theories about what she saw, by the way, is that you gain this supernatural vision where you can see entities or other things that normal people can't really see.
No, I definitely believe in that. And I think that we've said this before as well, where people will move down to the Virgin Islands or other parts of the Caribbean and they'll talk about this energy that they feel. They'll talk about these strange occurrences, you know, it's a lot of that same magic that you can feel when you go to Hawaii, you know, like it's otherworldly. And I feel like because it's such an influx of natural energy that a lot of people who live in a concrete jungle are not used to, it could definitely be extremely potent.
Yeah. And what I also love about this story is that it takes place in French Guiana, which is a place we haven't explored yet on our podcast. Most of our stories are coming from the Virgin Islands, where we're from. And Ketchi is from here too, but she grew up in French Guiana. So it totally blew my mind because I love hearing about different islands, different cultures. And though French Guiana is not an island, it's still kind of considered Caribbean. French Guiana is the only territory in the continent of the North and South America that is under sovereignty of a European state, France. They're also, if you don't know, they're located on the north tip of South America, and they border, I believe, Suriname?
Yeah.
Yes.
So they border Suriname and they are bordering Brazil.
Yes. It's a small little country, but it is 98.9% covered by primeval forest, which is crazy to me and totally makes sense with Ketchi's childhood. And by what I mean by primeval is this forest is like old, ancient, old growth, no development, pretty pure virgin forest, untouched. And because of that, there's a lot of amazing things that grow there that scientists and biologists would find fascinating because it is so ancient. And I thought that was a pretty cool little fact about French Guiana.
Yeah, I had no idea about that. I was very intrigued when she was talking about how her parents used to be like, yeah, you go outside and play. And all the while they're like jaguars and snakes and
acres and acres of just like dense forest jungle.
Being a lie, it gave me a little bit of heart palpitations because I was like, oh wow, this is literally like Earth School.
Yes, and the sheep are eaten the next day by the jaguar. I'm like, what? Like, we don't have big prey like that or big predators like that on St. Thomas. We don't. Yeah. So that's a whole other level. We don't even have
poisonous snakes to be able to be like, you know.
We have mongoose, and those aren't even native. They're aggressive as fuck. But
no, for sure. You know, I've done some research to try and figure out why certain areas like Guyana and Suriname are considered to be a part of the Caribbean, because when you think of the Caribbean, you just think about the archipelago, you know? You think about the islands, but you don't usually get the same recognition for those lands that are also attached to South America. And I've done research, but I've never really gotten a clear answer as to what is the deciding factor of the Caribbean region. Some places have indicated that any island, any land that borders the Caribbean Sea, but then that begs into question a lot of Central America that isn't usually acknowledged as being a part of the Caribbean. So that definition didn't truly feel like it fit. Yeah. And then I wondered if it was more cultural similarities that the region shares with each other, and places like Suriname and Guyana tend to also observe those cultural significances.
Yeah. Well, I also researched that as well, and I found a very informative YouTube video. I'm going to put in our links as well for our sources that goes just into that subject. What makes a region Caribbean? Because that was my first question as well. We knew growing up, like, these places, they're very similar to us, but why exactly are they? Because they're not technically along the Caribbean Sea or on the chain of islands. And then also the Bahamas, apparently, and I don't even know if this is true. So if there's any, like, so Bahamians, any of you guys listening, please check me or these people on your Facebook page, because I went on looking for stories on the Bahamas, like, Facebook group or whatever, and they're like, this content isn't, like, necessary here. We're not Caribbean. And I was like, huh?
The Bahamas?
Yes. 2 people were saying that, and they told me they're like, we don't consider ourselves Caribbean. I was like, really?
That's
this
really
is news.
Yeah, I'd have to look that up.
Yeah, I started researching it too, and I'm like, well, technically you are in, like, the Caribbean Sea, you're along the chains, and I'm pretty sure Bahamian culture is very similar to us as well, but I could be wrong.
I thought so as well. You know what's interesting about that as well is I think that might be multi-layered. Like, I think that there are certain Caribbean islands that don't see the Virgin Islands as being a part of the Caribbean because we have the United States umbrella over us. Okay. And so when you talk about, like, Caribbean islands, I feel like there are times where we are left out of the conversation. Sometimes Puerto Rico is too, interestingly enough. And so I wonder if there is some sort of historical component to their sentiments that attaches itself to that. Like, I wonder if they've never felt accepted in the Caribbean region or acknowledged in the Caribbean region by other Caribbean islands, and maybe a little bit of that jadedness of not, you know, nobody don't want to feel like they don't belong, you know?
Yeah.
Especially by people who's supposed to be your brothers and sisters. So I would be very interested to understand more about that conversation, because I feel like us in the Virgin Islands have a really interesting, complex relationship with the Caribbean islands around us. Not to mention, we're still very much colonized, whereas other Caribbean islands have managed to garner their own independence.
Definitely. And this kind of goes into the next subject of what is considered Caribbean and what makes a region Caribbean. So one of the first things that this video informed me was, one, the history. So especially with Belize, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana, is that our history is very similar to Caribbean countries. You know, it aligns with the similar colonial rules that was experienced by all of the other Caribbean countries. With the British coming in, French, Dutch, the same countries were invading those countries as well during those times in the 1500s, battling for colonization, pretty much. And then especially compared to Latin America, the rest of Latin America, these countries experienced more Black population growth due to the Atlantic slave trade. So they faced similar struggles for emancipation from these European leaders, and they even gained independence around the same time as the Caribbean countries and much later than Latin American countries. And I thought that was actually a very valid point, that we share a very similar history. to Belize, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. The second point he brings up is culture. And as we know, history kind of shapes culture. And because we share such a similar history, we also share such a similar culture. And it aligns with a lot of the Caribbean. So due to the dynamics of the Atlantic slave trade, they are very much diverse, like the Caribbean as well. There's a lot of different languages, mainly English, like in Belize, Guyana is Suriname, and Dutch and French in French Guiana. And it's funny because they are all in South America, yet they are the only countries that speak English and French and Dutch. And those languages are also spoken in the Caribbean as well. The other similarity is the food. You know, Belize, their staple food is like rice and beans, and that's served as well in Belize and Guyana and French Guiana as well. Rice and beans, they have plantain, it looks like they have fungi. I was looking at, some pictures of some of their dishes, and it is very, very similar to what we serve here in the Caribbean as well. Also, the festivities and events and even sports. You know, cricket is kind of big in the Caribbean, and it's actually huge in Guyana apparently as well. So the vibe in those countries are distinctly Caribbean. And you'll see pictures, even some of the architecture and color usage that they use on the houses. It looks like something you would see in like St. Martin or St. Thomas and other Caribbean islands. And then the third point he brings up, which I think is one of the reasons why some people have debates about the VI being like Caribbean enough, is because the politics. So a lot of those Caribbean islands or countries that are gain those independence from the colonizers usually have a shared politics under the umbrella of CARICOM, which is an intergovernment organization, political and economic union of Caribbean countries. And Belize, Guyana, and Suriname are part of that, except for French Guiana. And that's because they're still considered a French region, like a French territory. So they're actually part of the European Union, and they use the euro as their dollar.
I could have swear the Virgin Islands was a part of CARICOM, though.
I don't think so. You know, I looked it up, and I didn't see our flag under there, and I'm assuming it's because we're a territory of the U.S., but I could be wrong. Let me take a quick Google search and
maybe they maybe they just invite us to the barbecue, but they don't actually like we don't really have a seat at a table, but yeah. Which I could understand as well, because it's just like, if that is in fact the case, I could understand, because it's just like, we unfortunately do not have the sovereignty in the Virgin Islands to truly exist independently from the United States. US. And so, we can vote for our own governor and our own politicians, and a lot of our decision making does have to go through federal jurisdiction. And so I do, even when we have like federal money, like, there is a certain a huge level of oversight that goes into that. It's not just like, we give you money and you do whatever. Like, there's a protocol in which has to be followed. We don't decide our borders. We don't decide to close or open our ports when we, necessitate the conversation. That's something that's left up to federal mandate. And so it would make sense. And I also feel like we've been invited to CARICOM events, because I've seen news articles indicating as such. So there might be a relationship without an actual seat at a table, like I was saying earlier.
So I'm looking on their website, and we are not officially a member. They have the member states, and then they have the associate members, and we're not even on that, but the BVI is.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, and then Wikipedia, which, it's kind of a shaky source, but they said, what did they say? In 2007, the U.S. Virgin Islands government announced it would begin seeking ties with CARICOM. At the time, it was not clear what membership status the USVI has. So I don't know if we're still seeking or what, but due to their website
into that.
Yeah, but on their website, our flag is not there. We're not considered a member, so I'm not sure what happened or the reason behind that.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah. So those are kind of the three features of what would be considered a Caribbean region. And so I very much consider French Guiana Caribbean as well, because their culture, history, and politics are similar to that of ours and other Caribbean islands.
For sure, and I feel like a lot of what Ketchi said, I personally resonated with. Like, in some of the belief systems, you hear your name, you don't answer. That's definitely like a Caribbean belief system. Or her story with the masculinity, you know, definitely very, very close to some entities that we recognize here in the Caribbean region, which I'll get into a little bit later.
Yeah.
But something else that she said was she was talking about these items that she found her father saw on a tree that was hanging, that was used for nefarious reasons, you know, to put curses on people, and you were told not to touch it. And that guy that ended up kicking it and lost his big toe. I thought that was a really interesting story, because I've heard similar stories right here in the Virgin Islands of people picking up things that have been used in some sort of magic ritual and having horrible things happen to them.
Repercussions, yep.
Correct. Consequently, even though the spell had nothing to do with them personally, their touching it, you know, had that energetic exchange. So a lot of what Ketchi said I resonated with so much as it relates to our own belief systems here in the Caribbean archipelago.
I've definitely also heard my fair share of rumors and urban legends, like, you don't touch those like magical objects that are left there, which I have experience with, because somebody used to like desecrate my great grandfather's grave at the Frenchtown cemetery, and I'm pretty sure I know what belief system it's under, and nothing against that belief system because they get demonized a lot already, but they would leave like fish heads. My cousin found a pig's head once on my great grandfather's tomb. We found oil and candles burning and coins, offerings, you know, ritualistic looking pieces. My dad found a little doll, skeletal doll, looked like it was decomposing, in a little black suit, in a little coffin, like 9 inches big. And I'm like, Dad, stop touching it, you know, like, stop touching that stuff.
That's intense.
Yeah.
That is super intense.
Anytime I would go clean it up, because, like, if I was there, I was going to do something, because at the end of the day, I found more power in myself, because this is my family's, you know, not theirs. And even though they're doing some kind of magic there, at the end of it, I always make sure to clear myself and sage and clear my energy and make sure nothing would, like, kind of stay attached.
Correct.
But let's go into the masculinity. What you think?
Yes. So when she was talking about the masculinity, it actually brought back a lot of similarities that we have in the Caribbean region with the Duen. And you guys, if you have listened to season 1, episode 1, I spoke extensively about the Duen. But if you haven't, the Duen are these little childlike entities where they appear along the forest line, and their feet are turned backwards. They cover their face. They're usually seen wearing these large straw hats. And underneath the straw hats, they have no face features. And they lure children into the forest with intentions of getting them lost. And they're also known to do little, like, acts of trickery. So people who, like, lose their keys, or you know, strange phenomenon in the house, things being thrown down or whatever. A lot of people who live in areas that really acknowledge the Duen will say that it's the Duen up to no good. They say that the Duen are the children who were never baptized before they died. And so their souls are left to kind of roam the earth and to create, in the French community, we would say malfait, which means trouble. But something else that's really interesting is specifically the backwards feet sentiment that she was talking about. I find that to be really interesting because this is such a common theme among entities, not just in the Caribbean region, but in other parts of the world, like in West Africa. Santo Domingo, there is another entity called La Guapa, who is not inherently a childlike entity, but is more of a young woman. And she also has her feet turned backwards for a lot of the same reasons that Ketchi described, because people will follow her and they'll get confused because the feet are pointed in the opposite direction and they kind of lose their bearings. But she's said to have smooth, glossy hair and very beautiful skin. And oftentimes she'll lure men into the forest and then end up, having her way with them and then offing them and leaving them right there in the forest. Just one more that I thought that was really interesting, and this entity is called the Curipira. Yeah, there we go. Curipira. Yeah. You know what I try and say?
Curipira. That's a gringo version.
Curupira. And this entity is acknowledged in Paraguay and Brazil. And its name means to be covered in blisters. And according to cultural legends, this creature has bright red or orange hair and resembles a man or a dwarf. So otherwise is seen as childlike again. So I wonder if there is some intermingling of cultures with this sentiment. And its feet are turned backwards. It lives in the forest and it uses its backward feet to create footprints that lead to the starting point, which makes it hard for people who are hunting or traveling to follow the footsteps. They get lost. They hear a high-pitched whistle because that's the sound that this entity makes. And it ends up driving the people that are listening to this high-pitched whistle mad. And so they go crazy in the forest just hearing this sound, and it makes it easier for them to be prey. It's also said in some areas that they are not just nefarious creatures, but it's said that they also work very diligently to protect the animals and the forest. And so they'll specifically target hunters who are after animals that are taking care of their offspring, or people who tend to take more than they need from the forest.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I also heard of several entities in West Africa that are very, very similar with the backwards feet. I know in Senegal, in some parts of Senegal, they have something called the Kondorong, which are also little people with backwards feet. And they say they're only seen by people with supernatural vision. And they have the same intent as well with capturing children and luring them and getting them lost. They also have something called the Dagbami and Mandabel. Sorry if I'm butchering these words. But these are all in several regions in West Africa. And then I found one more in India and Pakistan called the Pichal Peri. And she's similar to La Guapa from the Dominican Republic that you were mentioning. It's also portrayed as a female with long dark hair and backwards feet. And supposedly she roams the Himalayas and rural mountains and enters the villages with the same intent as La Guapa. So there's a lot of weird backward feet people. And one more small creature I was thinking of was the buck in Trinidad culture and Guyana culture. They don't have backwards feet, but they are these small creatures that do mischievous deeds. And they're said to originate in Guyana, and they're like little dwarves. And if you capture them and keep them captive, they're bound to the owner. And they can grant you any wish, wealth, whatever you want, but you have to keep feeding them what they desire. And it's kind of similar to the story I was telling about the gnomes in one of those episodes. Yeah, you put them on your shelf and you keep granting them, and they keep asking for more and more and more until you can't keep up with their appetite. And it leads to your demise.
Guys, life is too hard, okay? It's already hard enough. Please don't
resort to little beans.
So let me ask a question, because I feel like we have traversed the world in these similar concepts. Do you think that there are all of these different beings walking around, or do you think that we, as different cultures, have named the same being?
I think if I look at it like a type of bird, like birds come in such a varying amount of species. I think it's kind of like that. Like it's the same being, but they look different, and they're different species in different countries. And it's really eerie that this is not the only entity. You hear about Sasquatch, the Yeti, Bigfoot. It all sounds like the similar thing, but they have different features in different countries.
Yeah.
And yeah, and same with certain entities. The lady in white, she is worldwide archetype entity. Long dark hair, kind of looks like the girl from The Ring. Maybe that one is the same one. I don't know, because they're like interdimensional or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Skinwalkers, or shapeshifters. That's also a worldwide phenomenon entity as well. Similar features, but again, different depending on the region. So that's my theory. I feel like it's like the same entity, but different species, depending where you go, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And the
no,
commonality, yeah, and the commonality, I also think, and I'm gonna go for a loop here, is that they're like interdimensional beings, or they could only be seen with like supernatural vision.
No, for sure. I definitely agree with you. And I think that these beings may have predated human existence on Earth. Because when you look back at a lot of this research, you'll find that even the indigenous people, the Tainos, the Arawak, had similar entities. And so this is not a modern construct. They're not just appearing now. They've always been here. They've always lived amongst us. It is our acknowledgement toward them that I think is making it a much more well-known experience. But these are ancient beings. These are extremely old beings.
Yeah, which is so crazy to think. And also, they were described in times where people could not communicate to one another from different countries, nor did they travel very often yet. It wasn't kind of like the age of exploration with sailing and boats and such and mixing of cultures. A lot of these creatures and entities and story and lore were established before this transcommunication with one another, which is even more eerie, the similarities.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like when I think about the just to hone in on this backward feet thing, I feel like I have done research on this before because I've done like content around this, and I've always seen that it has been seen as like an entity that carries this is usually synonymous with like evil. The backwards feet is one of those like telltale signs that you're in trouble. If you see in it, you're in trouble. I've seen a couple of stories when I was doing research for this particular episode that spoke about there being more kinder interpretations of these entities. But most of the time, the backwards feet just seems to be like, similar to the hoof. The hoof that we attach to every entity in the Caribbean. It seems. It just feels like the hoof is another, and the hoof makes more sense. I feel like it's more telling because when you think about our relationship with what the devil is supposed to look like, you think of this hoofed creature.
Yes.
And so the hoof makes sense to me, the cloven hoof. I would say that the backward feet, I really did try to find more because I just feel like this is a much older concept. And in my research, I have not been able to find anything that deals with this, but I will be back again because there's something to the backwards feet, I feel, that is very symbolic. I just haven't been able to identify exactly what that symbolism is.
It's definitely distinctive, and it's funny because that is the same thing I Google search. I'm like, backwards feet, because it's such a weird feature,
Yeah.
I don't know. And
I feel uncomfortable just thinking about it. So to see one in person,
it's
I'm
almost like
oh,
the uncanny valley. Have you heard of that before? It's what like scientists kind of describe as the phenomenon of something that looks like a human, but there's something about it that's not quite human that instills this fear in people. Like, you automatically, even with children, they'll look at something. For example, have you seen the movie Megan with that robot, that AI robot? Anyways, creepy robot girl.
On my movie game.
Yeah. is good. It's really creepy. It's a creepy robot girl, and she's got this silicone face, so she looks very human, but there's something that's not quite fully human about her that you can't put your finger on, and that's called the uncanny valley. And it's experienced by children, people. It's just this phenomenon, this like, it's just our brain computing, like, it wants me to think it's human, but it's not. And it immediately instills this sense of fear as like this instinctive of like fight or flight. Like, why is this freaking me the fuck out?
Yeah.
which is natural. But I forgot where we were going with this. Oh yeah, the reverse feet instills that with me too, because it's like, it's almost human, but it's not. And it's really freaky because those feet are not right.
Yeah, I would say the reverse feet actually freak me out more than the cloven hoof, because I feel like the cloven hoof is like there's no trickery in that. Like, you're clearly looking at something that's like, you know, not of this world.
Yeah.
But when you are looking at something that has human qualities and then you get down to the feet and the feet are backward, it is, to me, that would be probably one of the most alarming things.
Yeah.
And I hope the spirits around me listening to bring this into fruition for me. So I rebuke you and your backwards feet. But there's something about the backwards feet that really like would leave me uneasy, because it is the highest form of trickery, you know? It's deceptive.
That's the thing with the uncanny valley too. It's within entities as well. Like, they'll try to disguise themselves as like a human or a humanoid, you know, like crawlers or wendigos or certain shapeshifters or skinwalkers. There's something that wants you to make you think it's human, but you know, dead in your mind, you're looking at this pattern of a face and it's not right, and it leaves you with that uneasy feeling of like, I need to run, like something is not right about this.
No, for sure. It's almost like your subconscious can see it before you're conscious.
Yes.
And so it's just there, like, it already has you in fight or flight mode before you've truly identified exactly what the danger is.
Yes, because you're right. It's tricking you. Why is it tricking you?
Yes.
Because it has some kind of like malevolent intent. I think that's like the instinct behind it. Like, why does this thing want me to think it's a human? Like, why? And it's
no, for sure.
Well, for what it's worth,
you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that movie. It's an older movie, and it's about I think it's called The End of Days, and it's this woman that gives birth to the Antichrist and comes out like a full human, but like you shave his head and there's the 666 in the back. That, like, it's that trickery though. It's that like, I want you to think that I'm human. I want you to think that I'm like you. But then there are these things about me that, you know, like, take away my humanness. But why do you want me to feel like you're human? You know, like, there's something super like eerie, unnerving about it.
Totally. Well, for what it's worth, the little masculili that Ketchi saw, you know, it seemed like it was more scared of her than she was of it. Like, it saw her and it was like, oh, I just imagined like a little Smurf, you know, like, just scattering away real quick. Like, so who knows? Maybe we got it wrong. Maybe these things are maybe they're more scared of us, which would make sense. You know, humans are dominating a large part of the earth and overtaking forests more and more and more. And so, I mean, we're kind of at the top. Who knows?
Correct.
At least in the physical realm.
Facts. I know that I'm usually not the skeptic, but in my research with the backward feet, I was also seeing that it is in fact a medical condition to be born with backwards feet. Now, I don't know if they're operable. I mean, in terms of like mobility, like I don't know if they can operate
or standing up straight, right? Like,
yeah. But I even wondered, because she spoke about how remote some of those cultures are, you know, like there are all of these genetic differences with these cultures that haven't really been harassed too much. And so I do think that there are things out there that we aren't familiar with. And like the blue skinned people that you spoke about back in episode season 1 episode 5.
How do you remember?
I know, right?
I'm episode.
Here, like, you know why? Because I've listened to our episodes over and over again because I'm obsessed.
Yes, the blue Appalachian people with the genetic disorder.
Exactly. And so I wondered too if there was some sort of remote community of people that is a genetic trait of theirs. And I do think that there are these subgroups of cultures that live and have been more or less untouched and undiscovered still because there's so much land. And so I even wondered if there was, the only thing that throws off that theory of this being like an actual like child, but just with some sort of genetic difference, is how fast he was moving. Because she spoke about that, I feel like, at length, because it really stuck out to her. And also, she was a child when she was experiencing this. So I wonder if maybe it seemed super fast as a child. And it, you know, details tend to get scrambled in your mind, whatever the case is. But I did wonder if maybe this is not an entity at all, and this is some sort of genetic uniqueness to a tribe of people that may not have been discovered yet.
That is a really good theory and super interesting. Wow, why didn't I think of that? That's a good one.
Let the record reflect it took 13 episodes for me to come through and finally come with a skeptic point.
But it's so valid because we're still just, I mean, that place, like I said, is 98.9 primeval forest. So who knows what else is in the depths of French Guiana. And we're still discovering tribes that are just have not been touched by major society for years. And it's funny, you sparked a memory. There was this family, I don't remember the location. I want to say it's like Romania or some Slavic country in Eastern Europe. But the family members, it was like a brother and 2 sisters, or maybe it was like 4 members of the family, where they walked on all fours and their legs were just kind of I don't remember exactly,
Paulina, you're stressing me out.
Yeah.
You're stressing me out.
They did. It was a family of them. They walked on all fours, kind of like a dog or an animal, like feral, but they weren't feral people. They lived in a small village, and everyone knew them as, they called them like dog people or some derogatory name towards this family. But eventually, you know, some people found them from major, like, you know, city nearby, and actually helped a few of them and rehabilitated their legs, and some of them are able to walk somewhat normal today. And it also reminded me of this girl from the 1800s. They called her Camel Girl, I think the 1800s. There's a picture of her. And she was born with a rare genetic disorder where her feet were actually backwards, but her knees, she couldn't function. So she actually had to walk on all fours. So her knees bent. It was her knees, I think. Her knees bent backwards. Her feet might have been forward. I think that's what it was. But she was called Camel Girl, but she was making $200 a week back then, which was a lot of money. So Correct. She was living the high life.
Exactly. She was pulling in that money.
Yeah, because she was a sight to be seen back then when they, you know, were horrible to people with disorders. But, yeah, so it could be possible.
Yeah, so I also think to myself, like, there are certain things that happen, certain disformations, I'll say, that happen, and once you have that deformity, so to say, maybe it's genetic, where it's just like, because you had that deformity, the chances of you having a child with that deformity, etc., etc. So maybe this happened to a specific few people in the village, and they ended up having children, and that's sometimes what happens, where it just becomes a part of your bloodline. And what we may see as a deformity is something that is just like, no, it makes them genetically unique. It's just, it's a uniqueness more than a deformity at that point, because at that point it would be, an entire village of people. So yeah, I definitely think that there is a little bit of room for skepticism in this story. And also, there is so much around the world about these backwards feet people, and, they can't all be, they can't all be real people who ended up just having this birth defect. So,
yeah.
It could go either way.
I literally just Googled people with backward feet, and wouldn't you know it, man, there are some people out there that were born with backwards feet. But they don't look like they can be as mobile, Yeah. So when I'm thinking of like this little childlike creature with backwards feet running so efficiently through the forest, like, these people, they definitely look more like they have to use a wheelchair or some form of mobility, because it looks painful, first of all, as well. And a lot of them are like bedridden, wheelchair ridden as well. So, but it's out there, I guess.
Yeah. On the flip side too, is just like, if this is something that's been a uniqueness to this community for hundreds of years, they may have been born
evolved
with the bone, born with the bone structure. You guys see, I try and push my theory hard.
There you go.
I'm here like, let me play skeptic all the way if I'm gonna play skeptic today.
No, I love it.
And so it could have been like some sort of evolution that took place. Let me see, right? Let us find out in 10 years that there is actually a civilization in French Guiana who have people that are born with this condition. Please remember Gabrielle Say from the Caribbean Mystics podcast.
Oh, yeah. She coined it first.
Correct. Cut me my check.
So were there any last or final thoughts you would like to leave us with?
I just want to say thank you to Ketchi. We really, really appreciate being able to showcase stories from other areas within our region. And I think that Ketchi's story does a lot of what we set out to do when we started this, and that is to showcase our culture. But I think that on a larger sense, there is so much interconnectivity between all of us, that you just can't help but to feel a certain sense of kinship with people that share your cultural values, that share some of the cultural experiences that make you who you are. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much to Ketchi for sharing this beautiful story with us, this beautiful couple of stories. And yeah, thank you to everyone who's listening today. We have experienced quite a boom in listenership. And we are just so grateful to have so many people that care about our stories and our Caribbean culture, as well as what Paulina and I have to say, because we'd be here rattling off an hour. And most people stay to listen, which is really nice.
Yeah, I will also say again, thank you, Ketchi, so much for sharing this story. It was a fascinating one. I especially love stories about folklore entities and people witnessing them firsthand, which is fascinating to me. And then, yes, all our extra new listeners, welcome to Caribbean Mystics. Thank you for listening and your fascination with us and your reviews, because I'm reading them, and they're so like uplifting to us, and some of them are funny. People are mentioning the rooster. He's part of the show now. So
oh, they hate me. They're obsessed with ruining my life.
They just want attention.
They don't carry on like this when I'm not recording. That's what's funny. It's like they know when I'm recording and they're out there raising hell with my ass.
Well, they're pretty much like a staple. Maybe it should be part of like our logo next time. Well, that is all we have for you today, you guys. Until next week, enjoy the rest of your spooky weekend.
Yes, yes, yes. Don't forget to like, comment, and share to all of your social medias and all of your friends. And please send us more emails. I've been reading the emails and they're so fantastic. By time Thursday comes around, for those of you who have been listening and have not received a response to your email, you would have received a response by today. Thank you so much. It's taken me a minute to comb through them, but that's because I really want to give you guys the full level of love and appreciation that you guys take the time to write those emails with. And so your response is sitting in your inbox if you haven't gotten it yet, and send us more emails. I love to see you guys profess your love for us.
And thank you, Sarah Ann Mitchell, for producing this episode of Caribbean Mystics as well.
We love you. If you need any graphic design support, Sarah Ann Mitchell of the Sparrow and the Finch Designs is fantastic. She's been doing all of our social media promo posts this season, and her information to reach out to her is going to be in the show notes as well as the ad at the very end of this episode. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Caribbean Mystics Podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to share with your family and friends. Like, follow, and subscribe to keep up with all of our spooky Caribbean content.
Do you have a story you'd like to share that took place in the Caribbean? Email us at caribbeanmysticspodcast@gmail.com. That's caribbeanmysticspodcast@gmail.com. Or check the show notes for more info.
Caribbean Mystics is created and hosted by Paulina Creaky and Gabrielle Carrard. Theme song is Folktale Juve Rhythm by Umi Marcano. Are you in need of a graphic design company that can help your business soar to new heights? Look no further than Sparrow and the Finch Designs. Our team of skilled designers can create stunning logos, eye-catching advertisements, and visually stunning websites that will make your business stand out from the flock. Trust Sparrow and the Finch Designs to bring your vision to life. Contact us today at 512-316-8830 to get started.